close and protect our borders from illegal entry.
It is not a state's place to violate the laws of immigration and naturalization in this country by offering sanctuary. It is one of the few enumerated powers in the Constitution that our federal government is to protect the borders and to establish laws for naturalization. So it isn't the state's place to establish those laws either, but it is their place to enforce them. We cannot have any more Robert Krentzes dying in the deserts of Arizona. We must do what we need to do as states to enforce the laws that currently exist.
The problem is we don't enforce our laws. And the problem really is, because you always want to get to the root of the problem, we have spineless leaders. We have people in government that do not believe in the rule of law and are unwilling to support the laws that have been drafted by our political leaders and our constituents. When we have leaders with a backbone, we will be able to accomplish a tremendous amount. That is the problem.
The Declaration and the Constitution are both crystal clear on the fact that one of the main purposes of the federal government is to protect the sovereignty of our territory. And that's really one of its primary duties. And the states must, of course, honor federal laws and regulations that affect immigration and should not tolerate or provide sanction to illegal aliens. Some of them may passively or even actively, but that's wrong and against the U.S. Constitution. The states individually have a right to enforce those federal laws and enforce their borders, such as border states with Mexico or Canada. Thank you.
I also believe that these states that are offering these sanctuaries are doing so illegally. And yes, if the federal government won't do anything about it, I do believe the states have a responsibility to do something about it.
It is the federal government's responsibility to protect our borders and protect our security. However, I think it's Article 1, the 10th section, says that a state can declare war if they feel that they are under invasion or invasion is imminent and delay is coming from the federal government. They, in fact, do have a right to declare war.
That is true, but it is the federal government's responsibility to secure our borders. Now, how do we do that? Well, in Chris Burgard's movie, bordermovie.com, which is a documentary on our border to the south, we put our military down there for 1 month. No drugs and no people cross that border. It's as simple as that. We let our military train on the border. It'll stop the immigration. Now, I'm all for legal immigration. We are the melting pot of the world. But let's recognize English as the official language, and let's swear them in just like we used to.
And now a quick 10-second response, starting with Craig Williams. Should the government mandate a national ID card?
We already have some national ID cards. You all have a Social Security card, and some of you probably have a passport, but I see no need for another new national ID card. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. We just need to use the tools that we already have in place and follow through and follow our laws and rules, and we will not have the problems that we're having.
No.
Ditto.
Also no, and it gives too much opportunity for invasion and public privacy.
The Republican Party is the party of no. Well, this is a hell no.
Absolutely not.
Also in 10 seconds, beginning with Paul Akers, would you support voter reform that would require photo ID?
Absolutely. We need that for sure. We have voter fraud everywhere. It's a big problem. Yes.
Yes. In 2004, I fought for your right to vote in court, in the state Supreme Court and in the United States Supreme Court. The right to vote is very important.
I would also support it. It's about time we get something like this. It really is.
I believe that it's a necessary evil, actually, and unfortunately, we've had too many elections stolen in this country.
Well, we could go that route, or we could take away the absentee ballots, and we make people come and register like they used to in the old days. That way, we won't have to worry about voter fraud.
Absolutely, yes. And I have championed this, and those of you that have seen DVW or have been over the legislature have heard me fight for this on the floor of the Senate. And absolutely, we must have photo ID in order to vote. There's way too much fraud going on in the voting booth, and this is one way to stop it. Make sure the person that's getting the ballot is who they say they are, and they're eligible to vote.
I think it's a prudent measure to have to determine who, or to prove who you are in order to register to vote. But I do want to be buried in King County when I die so I can continue voting later.
And another 10-second response, Art Coday, under the guise of climate change, should the EPA regulate CO2?
No, I think it's unconstitutional, but furthermore, the EPA doesn't even know what acceptable levels of CO2 really are, so absolutely not.
No, I believe doing so would just create more control for the government, and this is something that they already have way too much of, just another way to control our lives.
Actually, the EPA has already decided to regulate CO2. They don't have authority yet to do it, but it's a definite no. They should not be there.
This would be another one of my hell no, and that's another one of my first bills I want to propose is the elimination of the EPA.
I think this question really gets to cap and trade, and absolutely I oppose cap and trade legislation. We need to focus on creating jobs and promoting pro-growth principles that get our economy moving again. I love our beautiful state, and we need to care for it, but poverty isn't the answer to America's environmental problems.
I agree this issue really gets to cap and trade, and the only thing I want capped is Patty Murray's career and her spending. And then I want to trade her in for a new model. I call it Craig for Clunkers program.
Absolutely, the EPA should not regulate CO2, but if they do, they should get the baseline established at that volcano at the base of Iceland.
And now 45 seconds to answer this one. It might take a little longer. Daniel LeBlanc, you can start. Define the proper role of the federal government should the size of federal government be reduced.
Proper role, protect and defend us, and then get the hell out of the way, pretty much. And yes, it should be reduced, and there's several organizations and agencies that can be eliminated or cut drastically.
I agree. Many of the agencies in the federal government are without support by the Constitution. There are many czars that have been appointed with powers for which they have no right to have. There's many infringements upon our freedoms that come from this government. It definitely needs to be cut back, not just in cost, but in its reach into our lives as well.
I told you already in the 5,000-year leap what our founding fathers envisioned for our federal government. They had four main objectives: war, peace, foreign commerce, and negotiation. Our Bill of Rights, the 10 amendments, were I shall not, shall not, shall not, and number 10 was if we forgot anything, you can't do that either. That's the role of the federal government.
My guide will always be the Constitution, and it always has. The power of the federal government should never go beyond the limits that the Constitution has set, And I don't think any one of our founding fathers, if there were a lot